can't see me, you Stevie. Wondering how I reach more evolutions than Eevee and make it look easy.
What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Blur Without Fear. Welcome back to the channel. Alright, today's video we're going to be talking about Nightcrawlers #2 by Cy Spurrier and Andrea DeVito. So when this one picks up, as each of the single issues of like Nightcrawlers, Immoral, X-Men, as well as Storm and the Brotherhood of Mutants, each of them take place in a very specific timeline of Sins of Sinister, whereas the previous crop of comics took place in the 10-year range mark. Not all of them were exactly 10 years, some were 9, some were 10 plus. You get the idea. This crop of the #2 issues is going to take place in the 100-year range, and some of them are 100, some of them are a little over 100. This one in particular is in the 90 some odd year mark. And a lot has happened since Nightcrawlers #1, where in this one we learned that the Sinister Council has taken over the entire galaxy. They have defeated the Shi'ar, they have defeated Asgard, and anyone else really who stands in the way of mutant expansion in the name of the Empire of the Red Diamond. Krakoa no longer matters since it was essentially lobotomized in Sins of Sinister #1, and all that really matters now is Sinister. And not even the Sinister who started it all. There's some nice little touches in there too. I like how the different Sinister clones, they now have different names, or I guess not necessarily different, but just their names have been changed a little bit. So the Xavier, who is turned into a Sinister, he is now Xavier in Sin, and that's kind of the name for each of them. So if you see any of the members of the Quiet Council, it's going to be Hope in Sin, Emma in Sin, and so on and so on and so forth. It's an interesting touch. They still don't call themselves the Sinister Council. They still refer to themselves as the Quiet Council, but just for the sake of making sure no one gets confused, I'm calling them the Sinister Council. And we also know now that Mother Righteous has gathered even more magical MacGuffins from across the Marvel Comics universe, all in an effort to build the most powerful magical artifact in the history of Marvel Comics, and that is the Reliquary Perilous. The Reliquary Perilous is supposed to be this magical artifact that is capable of purging the Sinister gene from all mutants across the universe. The very same magical artifact we talked about in the previous video, where we saw all manner of different magical artifacts. The Siege Perilous, we saw the Eye of Agamotto, we saw Thor's hammer, and various and sundry other artifacts, even going down to the Darkhold. All of these things are going to be combined together to create this magical artifact, and it's taken them this long gathering all of these artifacts over the last almost 100 years. So it lets you know that the Nightkin, or the Nightcrawlers of this comic, have not just been sitting on their hands. They've been out there trying to find all of these various and sundry artifacts. Now, one thing I do want to point out here, and it's something that we notice when they finally get their hands on Mjolnir from Thor during this issue, and it's that this version of Mjolnir is not the same one we've been seeing in the recent Donny Cates and now Torunn Grunbeck run on Thor. We've seen that this version of Mjolnir is pretty much the original looking one. It's not the broken and cracked one we saw in the previous issue, so a lot has apparently changed since then. But the big deal here is that the Nightkin and Mother Righteous may never get to finish the Reliquary Perilous because the Nightkin are dying off. Sinister had afflicted the Nightkin with infertility. They can't have children, therefore no new Nightkin could ever be born. And while the Nightcrawler gene is considered to be this sacred gene that is able to emancipate itself from the Sinister line, and this is probably the reason why Sinister was so interested in it, he made sure that he put fail-safes in place to guarantee that if they did break away from them, it wouldn't be for long. And we have seen that many of the different Nightkin have been succumbing slowly but surely to Sinister's influence. For those who have not been keeping up, Sinister has the ability to overtake the minds of anyone who has his genes within him, hence how he was able to turn the entire Quiet Council pretty much into himself. And any of the Nightkin who start to hear the voice of Sinister and it starts becoming too much for them to handle, they tend to, as we saw in the previous issue of Nightcrawler #1, where Wallcrawler, an amalgam of Spider-Man and Nightcrawler, started hearing the voice and sent himself plunging into the wall that surrounds Sinister's secret lab that Orbis Stellaris had stolen from Sinister at the end of Sins of Sinister #1. This is, for all intents and purposes, a death sentence because that wall can't be breached by any teleporter. And while the Nightkin are slowly but surely dying out, and Banshee and Vox Ignis have been incapable of finding any other Nightkin out there to add to their ranks, their numbers have now dwindled to being roughly around little over 50, when originally there were hundreds of them. But they had a spark of hope in all of this when Wagner Reign, who is a mixture of both Nightcrawler and Wolverine Laura Kinney, there was hope that there was some sort of a way that they could start birthing new Nightkin, and this is largely because of the healing factor within Laura Kinney that healed the efforts of infertility that Sinister had placed within all of the Nightkin's line. She was able to have a child with Summer Night, the first birth of a Nightkin since all this began. So yeah, almost 100 years is what it took for them to have their first birth. Very reminiscent of the whole Hope Summers deal where mutants couldn't have children for the longest time. And then boom, out of nowhere, Hope Summers is born, giving literal hope to all mutant kind. The child whose name we never get to learn, because the second that she appears shortly after being birthed, she teleports away in a puff of golden smoke, never to be seen or heard from again, seemingly using her powers at such a young age that she could have teleported herself anywhere. And this was too much for Summer Night to take, and is even too much for Wagner Reign to take. But Wagner Reign is trying to keep the brave face, believing in Mother Righteous, believing in the mission statement, all the while Summer Night has succumbed to the sinister voice and has flung himself into the wall of the secret lab. But this is not for nothing, because what we do later learn is that Mother Righteous is the one who is behind all of this. Initially, Mother Righteous fed off the faith and belief of those who she gave favors to, and those favors counted as faith in her as a god, making her even more powerful than she already was. And this birth of a child, for the first time in almost 100 years, was just what she needed, and she's taken this for herself and hidden this child away. All this time, using this child as a martyr for the spark. But with everything that has been going on, with them discovering that Dr. Nemesis is still alive somewhere on Earth, and in a weird way kind of looking very Last of Us-ish, which I guess is, kind of appropriate considering the popularity of the TV series adapted from the video game that's on HBO Max currently. But I thought it was really funny that he was just hung up on the wall like he was, one of the clickers or, stalkers or whatever from the Last of Us video game. And the discovery of him leads to the discovery that the original Nightcrawler is still alive, albeit he isn't for long, because even in his monstrous state, he realizes what Mother Righteous has done. And it's the act of Mother Righteous killing the original Nightcrawler that really sets Wagner Reign on the path of realizing that Mother Righteous is a fraud and that she doesn't have the Nightkin's best interest at heart. And even Mother Righteous herself is starting to realize, the Nightkin are starting to see through her being their leader, that she's not really in it for them at all. And now she's just having a mask off moment, basically just letting them know, yeah, okay, fine, I'm not in it for you, and I'm doing whatever I want, and I'm going to use you up until I can't use you any further. This is ultimately what I feel is going to lead Wagner Reign on the path to embracing her sinister gene. And I say this because as all this happens, she sees the face of her daughter, the daughter who she believed was dead, but has actually been in the clutches of Mother Righteous the whole time, hidden away and kept as a secret. Wagner Reign, now recognizing this, is completely disassociating herself from Mother Righteous. She is no longer wearing the heart headband. She is letting the diamond on her forehead show proudly for the first time in almost 100 years. And I feel like this is her statement that she is willing to let the voice in, that she is willing to become a Sinister and allow Sinister the ability to control her and manipulate her just to take down Mother Righteous. I feel like this is the setup for that. I think by the time we get to Nightcrawlers number 3, which once again, that's going to be an even bigger time jump because that's going to be another 900 years down the road, because all of the stuff that's going to happen in the number 3 issues takes place in year 1000. So if the trend that they've been setting so far, it'll at the very least be almost 900, maybe 950 years, maybe even 1100 years, roughly around the time of Nightcrawlers number 3. So we'll probably see that Sinister has very likely taken over Wagner Reign, or at the very least, they are working together in some capacity. And I guess we'll have to wait and see whether or not by that point she will have gotten her daughter back or died in the process of trying to get her daughter back. Or who knows, maybe we'll even be focused on Wagner Reign's daughter. That, once again, it's kind of hard to say at this point. We're mostly just playing a guessing game here when it comes to that particular aspect of it. But I definitely think by the time we get to year 1000, Mother Righteous will still be in power, and probably too powerful for even the likes of Wagner Reign and even Sinister himself to deal with it. They'll probably have to come up with some kind of an alternative to taking her down. But at this point, there's enemies on both sides of this because the Empire of the Red Diamond is more powerful than ever, and Sinister himself is just kind of along for the ride now by this point. Mother Righteous is very likely going to be at a level of power. I think if I could equate it to something, those of you who may or may not remember, I believe it was in Immortal X-Men number 3 where we saw a glimpse of the future where Sinister was on the run from Exodus. I think we could see Mother Righteous at that level of power, the same level of power that Exodus had when he was possessed by the Phoenix Force. I think we could see Mother Righteous like somewhere around in that tier of power. But once again, a lot can happen. As we saw the jump in time from Nightcrawlers number 1 to Nightcrawlers number 2, they're almost two completely different stories at this point because so much has happened. And even by this point, Banshee is so old that he looks like Gandalf the Grey by the time we get to this one, but as he should, because it's been almost 100 years. So yeah, it makes you wonder like, where all this will be. I think at this point, the only thing keeping him alive is Vox Ignis. And as far as Legion goes, Legion has gone to the point where he doesn't even really have any interaction anymore with Mother Righteous. He is taking the few mutants who he still has as a part of his flock and taking them off to the far end of the astral plane, away from all of this foolishness. So yeah, there's a lot of landscape changes here. There's even some other little cool stuff that's brought up in here in regards to like the chimeras and how far the Sinister Council has been willing to go to completely shut down any and all opposition to their expansion across the cosmos. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, this issue is pretty wild. Like there's a lot going on in it, and it's not shy about it at all. And I like that. I like that it's not trying to hold anyone's hand. It's just like, nope, this is what we're doing. This is where we're going. I do kind of wish there was a little bit more uniformity to Sins of Sinister. It's one of those deals where I feel like House of X kind of set the model, and no one has really been willing to follow that model since House of X. When we got to Ten of Swords was just a disjointed hot mess of a crossover event where it's just like, oh, well, read this book and then read this book and then read this book, which I guess is technically par for the course with comics a lot of the times, but it just didn't feel like there was any uniformity because House of X was just House of X number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then if you wanted to read Powers of 10, you could read that too, and it was all just kind of interchangeable. But then you get to this and it's just like, oh, well, here's Sins of Sinister number 1, and then just read these other comics in between, and then okay, when we get to the end, we'll give you Sins of Sinister Dominion. I don't know, it's weird. I'm still kind of on the fence about it. I'm still enjoying it, but I feel like this could be a little more uniform, and I think that would have made it just a little bit better. But anyways, that's everything I want to talk about with Nightcrawlers number 2. If you enjoyed this video, do the YouTube thing, like, share, comment, subscribe, and make sure to tap that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of the videos that I put out. We're trying to hit 100,000 subscribers on YouTube in 2023, and we're actually moving along pretty good. I think we're like almost 79,000. We can keep pushing that on up. It's getting there. It's getting there. I like where it's going. Until next time, let me know what you thought about Nightcrawlers number 2. Keep it plus ultra and sound off in the comments.